Let's move on to the issue of transgender rights. Is it your position, Melanie, that we've gone too far in accommodating people who feel their gender identity and their biological sex don't match?
Well, I think that anyone who is in a situation of gender confusion should, merit sympathy and understanding. But I also think that we've got ourselves into a situation where there is a body of pressure behind the cause associated with transgender issues, which seeks to basically write biological sex out of the script altogether, to basically say that if I were to say I am a woman, that is somehow causing offence to somebody who is in a state of gender confusion. Now, I think that is not only absurd, and is not only sort of draconian and even totalitarian, but it is denying me my right to say what I am, which is a woman.
Do you think that is what's happening?
I don't think that is what's happening. I think what's happening, it's all about equality. It's all about recognising that some people self-identify as a different gender and they should be given the opportunity to do that. And I think it's the kind of society that we want to live in terms of looking after people's mental health and well-being, and just saying that we need to be mindful of people's circumstances and what they're going through. And I don't think that...
I agree with that. I agree with that. I think we should be mindful and we should be compassionate and considerate.
Right, so
that's not what's happened. If you look at the proposal for the census, the proposal
census,
that people should not be required to say whether they're male or female, the proposal, the sort of consultation document says that it was thought to be irrelevant, unacceptable and intrusive to be asking about sex. But the crucial point is this: the option of adding a third choice of other, male, female, other, was considered problematic because it was thought to homogenise trans people and differentiate them from the rest of society. Now, so here you have a situation where, in my view, that's what should happen. If the census people, if people are concerned that transgender people don't find a place in the census questionnaire which simply says, are you male or female, fine, have other. But no, you can't have other, because to have other would somehow cause offence. In which case, I cannot say on the census, I can say on the census that I am a woman, but the census overall will no longer be reliable as the principal source of statistical information about men and women in the country.
And isn't that
can't be right?
Is that a problem for planning, for services going forward, if you cannot have reliable figures about who is the male and who is female, and those that identify as neither?
Absolutely, but I mean, I'm not quite sure if this is a concrete proposal. And I think it's about terminology. So as I understand it, having read it, I read it that it wasn't about, they were going to change the language of sex to gender. And so it's not that you'd be denied saying whether you're male or female, or either it would be just changing the language from sex to gender, which I agree with. I think it's important that we understand what the makeup of the country, both in terms of male, female, transgender. It's important that we understand. And I also think it's important to kind of note that ensuring that somebody has their equal rights doesn't take away from anybody else's equal rights. So equality is equality, and that's where we should come from as a base of understanding.
I mean, clearly, Melanie, as the trans community gets more awareness in the wider community, there are going to be more people, and there are more people now seeking treatment at a relatively young age. Isn't that long overdue?
Well, it may well be that there was treatment that such people require that they weren't getting, in which case I'm very glad if they're now getting it. What worries me, however, is that as far as specifically as far as children, for example, are concerned, what is often a passing phase of thinking that you're of the opposite sex, and which passes quite normally, is being medicalised. And these children are having a label hung around their neck, and inappropriate medical intervention is taking place. That's what worries me. That takes away the right of a child just to be a child.
Right. Is there too much sort of medical invasive surgery that is being offered or could be offered in future to children who are too young to be certain about whether they want to change gender?
I don't think we're anywhere sort of near that point at the moment. I think the Gender Recognition and Equality Act 2010 needs to be updated. I think that it's too simplistic to say that it's just a passing phase. And as I said, I think we have to be mindful in regards to how people feel and the journey that they're going through in terms of their sexuality, and how we talk about it, how we address those situations has to be done with care and compassion every time we have a conversation about it.
Right. So, do you think people who are uncomfortable with or sceptical about this issue, who may say it is a passing phase or there's just too much noise around transgender or gender issues in general, do you think some of that is transphobic in your mind?
I think that every time we get to a point where we're talking about somebody else's equality rights, there's an uproar. When it's about women, there's an uproar. When it's about black people, people of colour, there's an uproar. Now it's about transgender people, there's an uproar. And I really think we just need to take it, as I say, with care and compassion as we talk about these issues, as we talk about the act that's coming before Parliament, and we make sure that everyone feels comfortable talking about where they are in themselves.
Right, Melanie?
Well, the only people who won't feel comfortable are people who are likely to be called transphobic if they say they are men or women. And if they say that certain people are men or women, if somebody gives birth, it's not a pregnant person, it's a pregnant woman. That person who says it's a pregnant woman is likely to be called transphobic, and as we saw with the case of Germaine Greer, is likely to be howled off the stage. This is a weapon for a very authoritarian, very intolerant set of attitudes masquerading as compassion.
All right, we're going.
Hi, Ben.
Hey.
It's actually funny, 3 nights ago I was watching this video of you destroy Piers Morgan, and I was like, wow, I really want Ben to come here, and I found out today that you're here, so I'm really happy about that. So first I'd like to say that it seems like the abortion argument only became a women's right issue after the argument from science failed for them. I'm only 21, but it seems to me like the argument from when I remember, it started off as being science-based with like a human at conception. It's just a zygote of a monkey, a fish, a dolphin, whatever. And I remember like seeing images in middle school of them showing like the early development and showing how like, oh, there's no difference here. So, but then through like research in embryology, we find out like the DNA genetic template is there, human, like what you're going to be, it's there from the beginning, it says it all. So to my question, in a society today where specifically women have been so successfully convinced that an abortion isn't to be frowned upon, how can we convince young women to not get abortions when the voice of abortions aren't bad seems to be louder than the voice of like personal responsibility and like basic morality?
So, I mean, I think that the first thing is that, again, people blind themselves to answers they don't want to see. And it's our job to break through that. So I've spoken about this. I hate euphemisms with regard to abortion. Abortion is filled with euphemisms. The woman's right to choose. It's just terminating a pregnancy. No, you are killing a human life in the womb. And we should describe in graphic detail exactly what happens when that happens. Okay, when you're talking about a middle to late stage fetus that is developed, you're talking about, in many cases, the actual dismemberment of a human being in the womb. You're talking about crushing skulls and sucking brains into sinks. You're talking about torturing a child in the womb and then killing it. And that has to be brought out because people need to feel the gut-wrenching nature of what it is that is being conducted. They also need to be shown as many pictures as possible of what a baby looks like in the womb, because there is still you can make the intellectual argument for an embryo having the same moral value as a 7-month-old fetus, and I think that that's a pretty good argument, actually. But I think that the emotional argument is seeing a picture of the 7-month-old fetus. And when you know that you can tell the sex of your baby at 10 weeks, which you can, then it's very difficult to argue that this is not an independent human being with an independent DNA, with independent blood type. The more scientific knowledge that we put out there, the worse it gets for the left. And this is why this is one of the few issues where the right is actually moving in the right direction in terms of the polls. If you look at the abortion statistics and how many people actually believe in the pro-choice position, it's been declining steadily over the last 15 years, and it's going to get a lot worse because the better we can see into the womb, the more difficult it is for the pro-choice left to suggest that this is not a human life, it's just a cluster of cells. Thank you. Thanks.